Thank you, Inga. Good morning, everyone. So, my topic for today is RED 3 and biomethane, navigating implementation and geo-market impacts. Just a little short introduction on VATE. So what we do is we look at certain markets in green certificates, both power and fuels, including biomethane, and then also carbon markets, and we aim to provide analysis and insights. And our offering is in the form of a service as a subscription platform, so not the traditional consulting sense. And we're happy to announce that we have partnered up with Agriportents to provide more insights, particularly on the German biomethane market, which is a nice little synergy that we have. Okay, just an overview of my discussion today. So first, I'll talk about the RED 3 and some of the background, focusing on what's in it for biomethane, and in particular, the guarantee of origin related changes. I'll discuss some progress on implementation in what's happening in some of the key countries, and with regards to the geo registry picture, how that's been developing. I'll touch a little bit on the interaction between guarantees of origin for biomethane and the union database, and I'll do a brief introduction to guarantees of origin and market and monetization, all in that context of what's happening on the with RED 3, and then a little bit about the potential market outcomes and some of the impacts. So without any further ado, RED 3, how did we get here? Well, I think it generally started from the Fit for 55 package released in 2021, which is this mandate to cut emissions 55% compared to a 1990 level. And from that, we got RED 3, which was officially documented in the Journal for the European Union in 2023. So, and then I made a note here that the deadline for implementation was about a month ago. There were some permit-related provisions trying to get capacity online, which had an earlier deadline back in around mid-2024. But the main thing we want to concern ourselves here today with is the targets, and this is to do with renewable energy, which, of course, the assumption is that mainstreaming renewable energy will reduce emissions. So the first thing is in RED 3, they've increased the overall ambition for renewable energy share to 42%, 42.5%, where it used to be lower, I believe 29%. But the interesting thing to biomethane stakeholders is probably the renewable energy share target for the transport sector, which is now 29%. But a new addition is that they've said you're allowed to set a target in terms of a carbon intensity reduction compared to a standard reference. And they've said that reduction should be 14.5% for fuels. The other thing that there's some updates on is the accounting methods. How do we go and prove that we're onboarding renewables and reducing emissions? So the important things here for us are what's happening in the guarantees of origin for gas space, and also the union database, which is not new. They were both of these things were mentioned in RED 2, but there are more clarifications, and there's more of a push to get this done now because of that. So the next slide. So what's really there for RED 3? What's there for gas guarantees of origin and RED 3? So just a very quick recap. Guarantee of origin is the standard disclosure tool for renewable energy to be claimed by consumers or energy suppliers. So reading through the RED 3 changes, I think the high impact changes are those associated with disclosure provisions. So member states are to publish residual energy mix. So if you look on the right-hand side, I think most people are familiar with the concept of residual energy mix, usually from electricity markets. It's like you have a common grid, which includes both green and fossil energy mixes. And once you account for the green, what is left in the grid? So, and there's a provision here saying that gas suppliers need to provide an energy mix to customers via guarantees of origin. There are a few opt-outs in the case where if you don't use GEOs, you have to report on the residual energy mix. But currently, the way it's calculated for gas is just assumed to be 100% fossil, so it doesn't really offer an advantage there. The other opt-out is if the member state that you're in does not offer GEOs, guarantees of origin, for supported production, which is the case for Germany, and they allow you to use, I believe they allow you to use other methods, including things like mass balancing, as opposed to guarantees of origin, which are a book and claim system. But that's not particularly clear to me anyway. I believe that will become clearer in these green labeling provisions, and they do rely on information about the GEO, but I expect that the methods to clarify this energy mix via alternative methods will be in that. There will be a report released in December 2025, according to the latest articles in the RED III. And then what I consider a little bit lower impact is you have certain allowances for smaller producers. So now you're able to have sub-megawatt hour GEOs, whereas before that was the smallest unit possible. And you also have simplified registration for smaller facilities. I think those provisions in particular impact electricity generation more than biomethane production, although there could be some smaller facilities that could take advantage of this. And then you also have the possibility for hourly, sub-hourly tracking. Once again, I think that's more in there for the electricity side. I think on the gas side, there seems to be less of a push to get to very granular time tracking, just because of the fact that it's quite widely accepted gas storage is a thing, whereas electricity storage is still a little bit, well, not quite mainstream yet. Anyway, moving on. So looking at those three countries I mentioned before, I highlighted those three because I picked up that they were the biggest producers of biomethane, probably from 2023. I think they were the last official figures that we got. So just looking at three aspects in particular. So the renewable share in transport. So in Germany, it was about 12% in 2023. The new target of 29% or 14.55% reduction in emissions has yet to be implemented. And it looks like they'll likely adopt a GHG intensity target rather than renewable energy share. I think this fits into the existing program, the THG quota program. For Denmark, it's again the renewable share in transport is 11%, very close. The new targets have yet to be implemented, and they have stated in their climate plans that they will adopt a greenhouse gas intensity target. So France is a little bit lower at 10% in 2023, and they've already stated they will use a greenhouse gas intensity target and reporting. Now, looking at sustainability tracking, this goes very much to the heart of the Union database. So in Germany, they use the NABISI register to track sustainability, and Thorsten will talk a lot more about that in his talk. And it's not yet fully integrated with the Union database. Looking at what Denmark is doing, they don't have a register in the same way that Germany has. They rely on what's already being set up in the EU, particularly relying on voluntary schemes to show that your renewable energy or your renewable fuels are sustainable, and that's administered by the Environmental Agency in Denmark. So in France, they do have a register, this Carburant register, and the extent of the integration with the Union database is not quite known, well, to me at least anyway. Now, looking at the geo registry side of things, so in Germany, they don't have a gas geo registry. They have made moves, and they have announced that they expect something in 2026. So the GW, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that in German, but that covers both gas, heating, and cooling guarantees of origin. So right now, they have the Denner Biogas Registry as a proxy, and they are a member of a pan-European scheme. I will talk a little bit about that later. So in Denmark, they have the Energinet Gas Geo Register. Energinet also happens to handle the electricity guarantees of origin as well, and they are a member of the AGA COO scheme as with Denner. So the transfer between those two has been quite simple. In France, the EEX administers the gas Gas Geo Registry, but to date they are not a member of one of the pan-European schemes. Now, just quickly, what are these schemes I'm talking about? They allow an international or cross-border transfer of guarantee of origin or similar certificates. And right now there seems to be two schemes. One is the Certificate of Origin scheme, which is, I don't want to say unofficial, but it's there for certain members that don't meet the official definition of the guarantee of origin of a guarantee of origin register as per RED 2 or RED 3. And I guess the biggest exceptions there are probably Germany and the UK, so they are members of Argyle COO. The other scheme is the AIB gas scheme, and that's kind of the official scheme from the point of view that they also have the electricity scheme too, which is a lot more well established. I think currently there's about nine members in the AIB scheme, and I think 6 or 7 in the COO. But being a member in one of those schemes allows an easier transfer between the different members there. So the next slide is the interaction of the guarantees of origin with the union database. If you've been following the union database, I mean, I find it particularly challenging to keep up with some of the developments or lack thereof. But I'll try and summarize it, particularly this aspect, which is the guarantee of origin interaction. So I'll note while the geo registries and the union database will serve different purposes. One is disclosure and the other one is compliance. There's a lot of synergies there, but what I'm finding, or in my opinion, there seems to be more conflicts over what's happening there. Like there's a lot of risk in duplication of efforts, as well as there's a risk of double counting if you make a claim in the geo registry and a claim in the union database. You're possibly accounting for the same volume biomethane twice, and you need to be very clear in setting up your rules and guidelines so that doesn't happen. So the debate has been, what role do these registries play when it comes to evidence and transactions or evidence of claims? And on the right-hand side, I've put my very simplified view of like the different options available for the interaction. So one aspect of the interaction is where you carry out a lot of these, like a lot of the transactions. So some options put forward have suggested you do it all on the guarantee of origin register. Others have suggested all the tracking should be via the union database, and others yet are saying you kind of split the responsibilities and use the registries for what they were intended to. So guarantees of origin on the guarantee of origin register, and proof of sustainability on the union database. The other way you can slice it is the amount of interaction between those two registries. So on the left-hand side, I've got an informative, so you're just kind of telling, so each of them communicates with each other, but they don't really stop the other from doing what's happening. Or the other method is that they communicate through an intermediary. But then on the right-hand side, you can have a process where each one of those registers might gatekeep a transfer from happening. So the geo register might stop the flow of UDB, or the UDB might need to get some sort of approval from the geo register to say, yes, this is a legitimate transfer of biomethane, and vice versa as well. And it seems that right now the solution that they're leaning towards is the one I've colored green. So, you'll use the two registries extensively, but then you will have all this gatekeeping. So it's quite complex, but I think ultimately it should reduce the risk of double claim, which seems to be very high on the agenda of the Commission. Again, this is just a very light brush over this aspect. You will find a lot more information. The AIB has released quite a good summary of the options available now, and then the Union Database Wiki, and also the ISCC, who are one of the major stakeholders in the Union Database development. They offer quite frequent and detailed updates on what's happening with the Union Database. So now I move on to the impacts on the geo market. So this is a slide I generally share at all my presentations. The way I think a lot of people view the markets is you can either have biomethane production being subsidized, and then the certificate, usually the GEO that comes out of that, goes to a voluntary market, or you can have a compliance market where it's not subsidized, but because it's not subsidized, that certificate, that green value associated with the biomethane comes out to a little more. So here in Vate, we tend to cover the guarantees of origin markets. So it's a lot of biomethane has been subsidized but receives a GEO. Whereas the compliance market, you'll hear about this green certificate price, and then sometimes, actually a lot of the time, they will report on the total biomethane price, which includes green value and the physical gas. But just to be clear, we're just talking about this guarantee of origin value here. Looking at the next slide. So the voluntary market is driven by consumer demand for green credentials. Part of that is ESG, being a good corporate citizen. So companies purchasing GEOs to say, hey, instead of using natural gas, we're using biomethane. Good for us. And then the other thing, which is slightly related, is if you are doing that swap, biomethane for natural gas, you can claim overall that you're reducing your carbon emissions, which is Scope 1 by the terminology. However, the use of GEOs to represent Scope 1 reductions is not so widely accepted, and I've put that the guidelines have been slow in developing greenhouse gas protocols. And they're still, I think, since 2023, they've been trying to provide some guidelines for market-based reporting. And I'd just make the natural comparison to renewable electricity, where it's quite well accepted that you can use renewable electricity certificates, either GEOs and sometimes I-RECs, to represent Scope 2 emissions reductions. So they have a lot more leeway than something like a biomethane. So the general EU case to represent Scope 1 emissions reductions, there is one that's, I think that use case is growing for the ETS, where if you're an ETS bound obligation, if you use biomethane, you can reduce your ETS obligations. But being able to use a guarantee of origin to do that is still a developing field, but a growing field. So what that allows you to do is link the carbon price to the guarantee of origin price. And further RED III implementation will help that. Just having registries being developed in the countries, and then those countries developing rules around what's accepted. So on the right-hand side, I've put some of the developments over the last 2-3 years of the guarantee of origin. And when you talk biomethane, there's a lot of fragmentation, so you have to be quite specific about your characteristics. So the top line, this green line, is certified waste. So that's basically a GEO with a POS, and that the feedstock for that biomethane comes from waste products or Annex 9 Part A. And then the crop is from energy crop, which has a lower value because of sustainability concerns. At the same time, it does meet the sustainability requirements of the ISCC. So you'll see the developments. We had quite a high spike, and it kind of matches up with the energy crisis in Europe and the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And then you can see it's dropped to more reasonable levels. Now, the dotted line is the ETS, or the EUA, the allowance equivalent. So the way you calculate that is an allowance basically mitigates 200 kilograms of CO2 when you swap out the natural gas for biomethane. So you can see historically it hasn't been a good bet to make that switch because the biomethane has been a lot more expensive. But more recently, there's a bit more parity. So that use case we expect to grow, especially as the rules develop in a lot of other countries. Okay, so some of the takeaways, if you didn't get much from this talk, at least you should be able to take these things away. So RED III is all about increasing decarbonisation ambitions, and biomethane has a very strong role to play, particularly in transport and to some extent industry targets as well. The deadline for implementation, 21st of May 2025, has passed, and what we found is the transposition has been quite uneven across member states. Gas GEO progress has been slower than expected as well. Gas GEOs were in the RED II 2018, but only a handful of countries have guarantee of origin registers, and even fewer are set up to transact those guarantees of origins internationally. The union database, in theory, has all been implemented. It is operating, but we don't really expect like this critical mass until much later on this year. And then that clarification about how the geo registries will interact with the union database, hopefully that gets sorted out too, because that's going to hold up the markets. RED 3 Article 19 is potentially a boon for biomethane geos, and I think it all hinges on this recognition that guarantees of origin can represent Scope 1 emissions reductions, but we just need some guidance. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a graph. This was from the European Biomethane Association, some of the data they released on implementation recently. So the dark green countries is basically where you have a pretty good environment set up to use geos for ETS, in that you have a registry, they recognize geos for ETS in some extent, and they recognize imported biomethane for ETS reductions. So as the picture progresses, we would expect more countries to be dark green in that sense. But as you can see from that, and as I've mentioned several times, there's still a long way to go. But that's all I had for now. I'll take any questions. Oh,
I think, Inga, you're kind of muted.
Okay, sorry, can you hear me now? Okay, sorry. Then again, thank you very much for your presentation, Kevin. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat. We already received 2 questions. I would start with the first one. Regarding sustainability tracking, is that the counting of biofuels under RED targets?
yes, that's part of it. So sustainability tracking is about the proof of sustainability, usually via one of those EU voluntary schemes, and that is one of the applications. If you have a biofuel that is sustainability tracked, that's one of the requirements for it to count under red targets.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Thanks. The second question is, why is France not a part of any scheme?
That is a good question. From what I understand, it's only reasonably recently that EEX became the official issuing body for France. I think they have this system where it gets put up to tender, and I think it was just 2 years ago. Before that, it was GRDF, and now it's EEX. So that might have something to do with it. Maybe they're still trying to find their bearings. I did hear rumblings that they were going to join the Ergar COO. But yeah, I guess recently in the last few years, there've been a lot of upheavals of that geo system. Like it used to be a closed system as well, not that third parties couldn't partake in. So I think they have a lot of catching up to do, is the short answer. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And the following question, what could be the outcome for the future GHG protocol rules? Use of go for Scope 1 reduction or not?
Yeah. So my prediction, if you did have rules, and they will likely come from the GHG protocol, if they're saying yes, we accept guarantees of origin for Scope 1 emission reductions, I think that's going to push up the demand generally in the ESG space. Admittedly, that's seen a bit of a hit recently, but they'll have more credibility in that space, and we expect that to push up the demand and the price as well. But then one thing I didn't mention is that that market is fragmented in the sense that in certain countries will have different rules about how you can use biomethane for tax reductions, either energy taxes or emissions taxes for industries that aren't covered by the ETS. But I mean, we expect this to come to a head because The ETS is expanding. Of course, you have ETS2, which covers the transport and heating sectors. So, we would expect either the GHG protocol to come out with very strong guidelines as to how to, if they say no, then it'll be up to Europe to say, yes, this is how we're going to accept biomethane for ETS purposes. And that'll probably be enough for local industry.
Okay, thank you. One next question is, are there any works to include negative biomethane emissions in ETS counting system?
So currently the way it works, when you use any fuels for ETS, it's either you report on the actual intensity, the carbon intensity, and that gives you the emissions, or it meets sustainability requirements and it's considered zero rated. So it doesn't, like if you have a manure biomethane, which generally has a negative emissions, it doesn't get any special treatment under ETS. It's just considered zero. That said, you not only have ETS obligations, but now you're finding that there's other renewable energy obligations, particularly in maritime and aviation, which isn't so relevant to biomethane, but certainly bio-LNG in maritime. So Fuel EU, that will recognise the negative emissions. So the answer is no, but there's other ways to kind of recognise the benefits and monetize.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next question. Can an industrial customer just buy a GO or GO without the physical biomethane and replace it with an EUA he's buying to offset emissions for natural gas?
So the answer is I don't believe so. Generally what's required is that you need to have the GO and also the proof of sustainability. And generally that means you kind of purchase everything bundled. So yeah, my understanding is that no, there might be one or two countries that allow it, but I would have to double check that.
Perfect, thanks. One next question is, are there countries where GOs have been linked to proofs of sustainability, POS?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So that's one of the ongoing debates with regards to the GO UDB interaction. So one of the solutions that was put forward, and I think is kind of being not so strongly viewed, is that you would have the POS information linked with the GOs. In terms of countries that currently allow it, I couldn't say off the top of my head. I think there are some that do allow it, but it's not necessary. It's not mandatory because the GO has a strict definition which doesn't include the POS right now.
Okay, perfect. The next question is it safe to say that although two countries are not member of either AIB or ERGA, cross-border biomethane trade can still happen if there is a gas GO registry? Are they not easy if the countries were members of the same scheme?
Yes, that's it's still possible for if we're saying that the transfer has to occur via GOs. I think there's more impetus now. I think there were statements released saying that the only recognized transfers are going to be via GO registry to GO registry. But you have certain ways you can do what they call ex-domain cancellations, which I think are probably going to be phased out in the longer term. And then if you're saying that it doesn't have to be GO, you could do like a mass balance transfer. And for instance, Nabisi allows that as well. So you're able to do that with countries that don't necessarily have guarantee of origin. But via GOs, there are ways, but they're being phased out.
Okay, perfect. I think the last question for now I'm able to answer because the question is, will the recording of this event will be shared in the end? And so our plan is to publish the recording on our YouTube and then share the link with you. So yes, the recording will be shared in the end. And for now, that's it with the questions. Thank you, Kevin, for answering the questions. And I think
No problem.
now we can hand over to Torsten.
Yeah, okay, so many thanks. I quickly have to have a look that also right slides are shared, but I believe so. Okay, yeah. So many thanks at first, Kevin, for your insightful talk. I really enjoyed it and also got a few new insights. So that's good. Um, I will try to catch up here with an overview of the different biomethane registers and try to complement a bit what Kevin already elaborated. So perhaps briefly about us, Equiportance. We are a company founded in 2021 in Germany, and basically we have a software for sustainability certification according to RED30U or ICCU. So this is especially important for the POS creation, where you can create your sustainability certification with us, meaning the GHG balance or the CI source calculation, but also the mass balance and also preparation of different documents like self-declarations, but also the registers, and in Germany also gas shipments, but we also do the brokerage of biomethane and liquid carbon dioxide in Germany and the EU. So if you have there any offers or any requests for biomethane, feel free to reach out. We are a team of around 30 employees and have at the moment 770 paying customers all over Europe. Um, I would like to start with the functions of the different registers. So we have here two main aspects, that is ensuring having traceability and transparency throughout the whole supply chain. And therefore, different authorities invented basically the proof of sustainability as one possible document, and then the guarantee of origin. And the idea is here to keep up with compliance requirements, prevent double counting, and also have ensured that trading and transfer of volumes and renewable energy volumes happens based on certain standards, especially the EU defined, but also the member states. And that means also the correct allocation of the origin of gas and other energy volumes. So there was this or there is this confusion whether what's a GO and what's a POS. So the point is that the GO proves mainly that an amount of energy is created from a renewable source. Like, for example, we can prove that a certain amount of biomethane is really or was really produced from bio-waste or some other kind of sustainable material. Whereas the proof of sustainability is a bit more advanced regarding what it should do, because it should verify that biomethane meets certain sustainability criteria, like, for example, GHG reductions, use of sustainable substrates, and also meaning that certain kinds of substrates used were part of certain positive lists like Annex 9A, or what else lists do we have, like the biomass code list from the BZ. And it proves also sustainability across the entire supply chain. This is something I would like to elaborate in detail, but having a look at a POS which is created in Nebisi at the moment. That is currently done at the last interface, so the biomethane injection plant. Whereas UDB really tries to do that, the whole supply chain, because they even want to track transactions, like the different kinds of biomass which were transferred. So this is at first to ensure all sustainability criteria were handed along the value chain in a correct way, but also to ensure that fraud is prevented. What registers are there currently? So Kevin mentioned already AIB, ERGA, and others, and like the UDB, but we also have Nebisi, the Dana Bargas register, eControl, for example, in Austria, and many more sometimes run by grid operators, sometimes run by government authorities like NABESI, and sometimes run completely by based on private initiatives like the Dena Biogas Register. Yeah, and those typically either care about POS like UDB and NABESI, or a GO like Dena does, or ERGA and AIB do. I would like to start with NABESI a bit. So this is a good example for one national register, which was developed by the Federal Aid Office for Agriculture and Food, the BLE in Germany. And here, market actors can transfer the proof of sustainability for liquid biomass and liquid gases biofuels. And the scope is here basically the GHG quota application in Germany, but also the EU ETS in the form of the national law for it, and others like some subsidy schemes. To be an actor on this platform, you need to have a RED EU or ICCU certification or others of the voluntary schemes. So there are more voluntary schemes in Europe, like, for example, Better Biomass, but those two are the most prominent ones also for the different kinds of energy we have. And then those companies get assigned a unique NABESI ID, and then are able to, depending on the interface, either create volumes or also act as some kind of trader and receive POSs and hand them along the value chain if they like to resell those. As already mentioned, the proofs can be created by the producer of biomethane, so the last interface. All in advance have to use one of the delivery documents, or they have to comply with the delivery document standards from the voluntary schemes like REDcert and ISCC. And they outline in their documents regarding mass balance requirements and traceability and chain of custody what exactly a producer before that last interface has to hand along in terms of data points. And here, for example, you see one example POS with the different CI score elements, but also the amount of energy and so on. Really important is that this is not a marketplace at all. It's not a financial transaction, so just the transaction of the POS, and the financial transaction must be settled between the business partners, and that there is the freedom of contracts, so their business partners can agree on however they want to settle that within the boundaries of existing regulation. And also important, this is also not a GO register, so the link would be happen, for example, in this column Verbindungsdokument or link document, where you could enter, for example, the DENA GO number, which is then linked to this POS, so that would be a possibility. Here you see also a ready document, like how it looks like. The important thing here is also you do not have completely freedom what to enter into NABESI, but they have kind of a bit of regulation. So there is an extensive biomass code list, and there you have different kinds of fuels, like, for example, here biogas or compressed biomethane. And there is then the feedstock it is made from, like, for example, in this case, manure. And you also do have next to biomass code and here the fuel type and the type of biomass. In some cases, differentiation between different plant configurations. So those you have outlined in the Renewable Energy Directive, especially for biomethane, like does your plant have an off-gas combustion, and does your plant have an open digestate storage, because this affects the CI score, and therefore if you would try to go with these disaggregated default values in the BZ, those would change regarding on the biomass code you choose, depending on the plant configuration. So this can have quite a big impact. So either both kinds, so either what kind of CI score you're eligible to, if you don't choose the individual calculation, which quite a lot of people or market actors do, and also the kind of feedstock. Because if you have here a look at the prices, you may see that for manure-based biomethane with a CI score of minus 100 gram carbon dioxide equivalents per megajoule, and waste and residue-based biomethane with a CI score of plus 10 gram carbon dioxide equivalents per megajoule, during this really high price phase in the market end of 2022. The difference was nearly on the spot market, 20 cents per kilowatt hour. So that is even more than you would receive at the moment for any kind of quality on the spot market. So therefore, it's really important to keep correct track of your sustainability characteristics and do not act sloppy there, because if there should be a price increase, then this could have a kind of an effect on you. Also, if it can have quite an impact if we stay with the example of waste and residues. If a certain substrate is recognized as waste and residue at all. So one good example is their straw, which is in some cases a waste and residue, and also considered as an advanced feedstock. So feedstock eligible for the production of advanced biofuels. And if you do not have that, for example, because you have hay produced, which might be considered as an energy crop, then you wouldn't have this consideration as waste and residue, and there would be a tremendous price drop. And also certain markets wouldn't be accessible to you because, for example, in the fuel market, they would only offtake probably advanced biofuels at the moment, or biomethane, which could be used for that. So the DENA Biogas Register is operated by the German Energy Agency, DENA, and platform for documenting biogas quantities and qualities in the natural gas grid. And it is especially for the subsidies regarding electricity and heat production in Germany, so the EEG, or the heat production according to the Building Energy Act, the GEG in Germany. So regarding the first one, this is quite a German market, but especially regarding the second one, this is something where also international volumes are interesting, and therefore we see quite a bit of imports to Germany, also for other sectors into the DENA Biogas Register. So although this is a national register, this can be used also for imports and exports. In case of Nabizi, I forgot to mention that it's the scope is even bigger, because you could do transactions between third-party countries. So, for example, having a transaction from, I don't know, a Spanish actor to an Estonian actor within Nabizi. In theory, if both are ISCCU or Red Cert EU certified, have an account there and so on, and do want to create a POS transaction. So therefore, Nabizi could already be used for POS transfer within Europe, although it is run by a German authority. Nabizi or DENA Biogas Register, what to choose, or both. So this is a graph we took or adapted from the DENA itself. And here you see four different schemes where biomethane could be used, like the EEG, the German subsidy, but also the Building Heating Act, and others like the TEAG, that's the national implementation of the EU ETS. And here you see that either Nabizi or DENA or both have to be used. So one clear case where just DENA is used is the GEG. So that is where you can simply use the DENA biogas register at the moment. In case of, for example, the UETS, it depends. So for energy use, you would have to use NABISI, although if you want to use biomethane within the scope of UETS in Germany for material utilization, so then you could also use the DENA biogas register. And an example where you have to use both, that is quite a German example, is if you receive subsidies according to one of the EEG subsidy schemes, and you have a CHP plant operating with more than 2 megawatt, then total weighted thermal output, then you would have to use both registers to have the GEO and have also the POS currently. So much about the DENA biogas register. To give you there an overview, and regarding ERGA, which was also already mentioned by Kevin, this is a CEO scheme, so a certificate of origin, and currently I think they have 40 members because they act not only as the scheme but also as some kind of association. And there are also 14 European registers currently participating, but yeah, not all of them are connecting also their registry. So this Germany does at the moment, although this is a bit tricky because the DENA biogas register is connected. Nonetheless, the German Environmental Authority, the Umweltbundesamt, they are currently going with AIB Hub to have there also the geo transfer within Europe coordinated. And DENA registered its or connected its register in 2021. Well, then we have the Union database. This one was established by the European Union and already laid down in the ERA 2, so that the Union database shall be put in place. And the goal here is to have traceability of gases and liquid fuels like biofuels, RFNBOs, recycled carbon fuels, and so on, where biomethane is one part of it. And clearly the goal is the avoidance of double counting and fraud prevention. Nonetheless, as Kevin also outlined, it's a bit of tricky because then they want to have quite a deep tracking in the market. And there are some touch points with geo registries, and there you then have to have a look how to exchange information and so on, which is currently coordinated. Yeah, and the idea here is to know the origin and quantity of raw materials along the value chain, but also that you're able to model production processes and systems. So this is something new because in the DENA biogas register, in NABISI, you would just track the energy volume and not any conversion factors for biomethane. It's a bit different for the heat and electricity sector, but this is a German topic because there you would have also to enter the degree of efficiency and and this is then a proof of sustainability. So far, not also a geo register, which would make things easier, but it is. And the important new thing is that you have to track greenhouse gas reduction values along the value chain. So if, for example, you have a certain amount of biomass you want to forward because you're, I don't know, a trader of biomass, or you're a plant operator and receive biomass, then the trader in advance would already have to give you the individual calculated CI score if you want to make use of that option. Otherwise, you have to use whatever else is possible there. So, like, for example, standard values or NUTS2 values if those are available for your specific NUTS region and your specific feedstock. So this is a bit tricky because those NUTS2 values have to be certified or accredited by the European Commission also. Um, yeah, that is also interesting for transactions. There is a bunch of data required now, which wasn't required prior, at least not in registers, at this level of information, like, for example, buyer, the date of trade, unloading, and delivery. So three different dates. Also the loading location, the delivered material, delivered amount, POS data, so the GHG emissions or CI score. So this is quite a bit, and their minor mistakes might also affect quite a lot in the value chain. So because although this is not good practice or best practice, we know that in the market quite a lot of the mass balances are currently running, and also of the traceability is currently done with a lot of Excel and other Office applications where information is stored and then in the heads of employees who well are in charge of that. And with the UDB, you have to harmonize all that with what you're doing on site. So therefore, we believe the trend will be that there are more softwares in place. Yeah, well, are there any questions?
So I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Torsten. We have already received a couple of questions, which I will now go through one by one. I would just start with the first one. This is, do you need to be a member of a voluntary scheme or be certified by a scheme to use Nabizi?
Yeah. So what you need to have is, for example, a Red 30U certification or an ICCU certification, and there you also need to have the right interface selected. For example, Red 13U, they know the trader before the last interface. Like that's typically a trader of I don't know, biomass amounts, like feedstock traders and so on. And if you have that, that's kind of useless for your Nabizi account. You need to have the last interface at least. And ideally, that we recommend to all of our customers, the trader uh, after the last interface. So, I think it's called different, but you know what I mean, such that you can have a trader's account in Nabizi, because otherwise you can create a POS, but the off-taker has to accept it. And this way, you can create the POS in Nabizi as the last interface, accept it with your trading account, and then forward it to potential off-takers. That's how it's structured.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. The following question is mandatory interconnection of GOs and POS has been implemented in the Czech Republic as GO Plus. We would welcome your opinion on how you understand 3 months of mass balance in the interconnected gas grid according to the regulation 2022/996, specific in Article 19.
Um, okay, I hope I got the question correct. Otherwise, feel free to ask in advance or further. So there is the statement that the European gas grid is one, is considered as one mass balance. And I think what this means is that you are able to inject into the gas grid and take volumes from the gas grid and hand along the certificates with you. And then you're fine, because before that there was a way more orthodox interpretation of it, so that you really had to physically separate the volumes, like those who try to import biomethane volumes into the fuel sector in Germany for the GHG fuel quota application in 2022 and 21 remembered that was partially the reason why prices were increasing, because only German volumes were de facto considerable for the market, because the only other option was to import via CNG or LNG truck volumes to Germany, which is as everyone knows, way more costly than pipeline transport. And due to a lawsuit, this was then adjusted, and also pipeline connection was after this interpretation made eligible, and therefore you can hand forward volumes through a pipeline with the certificates. That you should have to be sure. We know that in the market there is also behavior to just buy certificates, but this is also kind of a gray area. It's not that this is kind of stated that this is really yeah then legal with this interpretation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Thorsten. The next question is, where is the spot price for biomethane tracked?
Yeah, so we do track prices, and one way to access them would be to have a wait account in future. So that we could recommend. There should be also some market report and so on, but also other actors in the market do track prices, and we also have we publish occasionally also some spot prices on our webpage. Yeah, so but in the end, it's market actors who track prices and then refine them, and then, like for example, service providers or companies like they do publish them extensively, also with additional reports and so on. But companies do have to collect prices. It's not that you have an energy exchange or something like that. Where prices are publicly accessible. That is not the case.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, where do I see the production period on a Nabizi POS?
That is a good question. I don't have can't answer you from mind. So the production period on the POS, I guess that there is actually, that's a good question. So there are two different date fields, like for example, the date of creation of a POS, and I think the last interface they have to issue that within the production period, and then during audits, typically the auditor would have a look at all the POSs and compare them with the actual production which happened. So usually. Uh, how we do it with our customers is that each month we calculate the CDI score and wait for the gas grid operator to give us the correct number, what was injected into the gas grid, and based on that, and then the mass balance with the different substrates, we allocate then from the overall injected volume to the different substrates the partial volumes and create POSs together with the CI score in Nabizi. So therefore, the date of creation, that would be the period there. There you need to consider that the mass balance period at the moment is in a certain scope free to choose. So but the utmost limit at the moment is 3 months, which you have. So usually people or customers try to stay within this 3-month period, but create nonetheless a month on a monthly basis their POSs.
Okay, perfect. We have a couple of more questions. That's why I would just go on with the next one. From a compliance perspective, is 10 gigawatt per hour of biomethane with a CI minus 100 CO2e per megajoule considered equivalent to 20 gigawatt hours of biomethane with a CI minus 50 grams CO2e per megajoule?
Yeah, I guess I got the direction of the question. So that depends on the market. So I think you have to consider that there are different compliance criteria in different markets. Like for example, in the German Building Act, there is just stated you need to have energy from biomass. So, and it has to comply with certain criteria, and then there is a positive list and so on, but there is no CI score. So there, if you want to sell into that market, this would be completely irrelevant. Nonetheless, the market somehow established a combinational product with the requirements for that specific market and the national emission trading system in Germany, which is a complement to the EU ETS, so really complicated. And they know a CI score requirement, and therefore they at least want to have volumes with less than 21.6 gram carbon dioxide equivalents per megajoule, if I remember correctly. And that's it. So there you have just a hard threshold, and if you take it, nice, and if not, that's completely irrelevant. And also, if you get on way ahead of it, that's also completely irrelevant. And then you have, on the other hand, quota-based markets like the German GHG quota obligations, or the FuelEU Maritime coming up. So that's also really a really interesting market there. And here the CI score matters a lot because there you have a linear reduction, and the lower the CI score of your energy, the better for the operator, because then he has to use less of that low CI score energy, and then that's a trade-off from the buyer if they, I don't know, want to spend more money and have a way lower CI score, or if they are for certain reasons because they the price of a lower based or a gas of biomethane with a lower with a higher CI score is not that far away from other fuels is also acceptable. So that is when something the market decides. It's not really that there is a fixed compliance criteria or a fixed formula saying this.
Okay, thank you, Thorsten. The next question is, where does the financial transaction take place, in the UDB or other marketplaces?
Other marketplaces. The UDB is also just a register for the sustainability characteristics. So therefore, the trading would still be between the different parties. And there, it also, I think we both showed the spot market curves, but it doesn't matter if you have a long-term offtake agreement or if you sell on spot market and so on. So that does not really matter in the UDB. It's more like they really just want to have a real transfer of energy as it happened with the sustainability characteristics tracked. That's it then, basically.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, will Nabizi and UDB run in parallel, or as I understand, UDB is for POS with some kind of link to GO registry?
Yeah, that's a bit difficult. I think there are negotiations happen in the background between the different registries. So there is the idea to have a link from UDB to other registers like for GOs like ERGA to get data, but also push data into their registries to avoid double counting. And also with the Nabizi to have a look whether if a POS is created in UDB, it's transferred also to Nabizi, and you don't have to do anything there, or if you're also able to create a POS in Nabizi and push it to UDB, or if you have to run both systems in parallel because the EU says this is an obligation from the EU, and then Germany, for example, says the same for Nabizi, and then you have to run both if you want to participate in business in Germany. And same could be then true for other countries if they have registries like I don't know without knowing if this is true, and this is truly artificial from my side. So taking e-control from Austria. So if they say, okay, we want to track this also in e-control, and then you have to track it in the UDB as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. The next question is, you mentioned new role of UBA registry within AIB. What do you think is more probable, scenario. First one, Dana will adjust its setup for green certificates, COO registries to ability to handle GOs internationally, or the second, UBA will take over the role of main international registries in Germany.
Yeah, so the AIB that is for some GOs, and but so we when we talked last time to dinner about this, they said, for example, that for the German Building Heating Act, where the data which is tracked within AIB wouldn't be enough for to fulfill the requirements. So therefore, the register, the Dana Vargas register, has still some role in the market, and I think it probably will be a mix of these ones, that you have some kind of consolidation, because UDB will probably take over quite a lot of responsibilities over time. Um, through, so probably, and then that you have still other registers keeping up with those fields which were not yet touched by UDB and other EU officials. And so, yeah.
Perfect, thank you. We have 3 more questions. I think we can finish them and then I think we're done. So the next question is, why are there 2 registers, Nabizi and Dana Registry?
Good question. So I think the Dana registry was really more for the geo transfer and developed especially for the different German subsidy schemes for heat and power production, the EEGs, and they're especially for biogas, and whereas Nabizi was really for the POS and then for the fuel market. So they initially they were developed for 2 different compliance markets to track the criteria they needed, and that's my perspective. So therefore, those different registers evolved.
Okay, perfect. The second last question is, thank you for the presentation. The question is the following: I'm a producer of biomethane produced from mix of raw materials, manure, husks, and so on. Is it possible to create the POS in Nabizi for the mix, or do we have to split it for separate raw material?
Yeah, so actually currently you have to split. There was, beginning of last year, a huge discussion because that was under the keyword co-fermentation or co-digestion, because some I don't know who made the request to know that to I think ISCC, whether co-digestion is proper and in the scope of the current regulation or not. And then they figured this out with the EU Commission and found out it's probably not. And this was actually not implemented like this by Nabizi and the BLE behind it. And also, this was market models around it evolved, like, for example, sending just manure for the fuel sector, which was kind of different, that you had really this a single substrate to use. So therefore, there was briefly the discussion if that is changed, but they found a loophole to get around it, and so far still you have to split according to substrates. There is the possibility for some biomass codes to report a mix, like, for example, I think there was something like 20% corn, 80% manure, or something like that. But I'm not aware that someone is doing that, because at first, for the fuel sector, it's really not beneficial, because then you do not have an advanced fuel, but all your manure volumes go down to also conventional fuels. So you would get rid a bit of your compliance bonus there. And second, if you don't have a biomass code with a correct mixture, it's not there's no possibility to create your own biomass code, so to say, and say this is then my biomass code for this specific mixture of substrates. So yeah.
Okay, and one last question. Spot prices on the slide for German biomethane. It was clear price or bonus for the price of natural gas?
Yeah, so the spot prices we had were presenting the molecules, so the natural gas price, including the certificate price, so that you would transfer both to your off-taker, not just the certificate price. So if you have, I will go back to the slide. For example, a spot price of 10 cents per kilowatt hour for manure with a CI score of -100. This means you would transfer the biomethane, but also the POS in a BZ.
Okay, perfect. There are no further questions in the chat. But I think if you have any other questions after the event, you can feel free to just write us an email and ask your questions. But thank you anyways, Thorsten and Kevin, for answering all the questions and also for the presentation. And to all, thank you for your participation, and I hope see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.